Let's watch this video here because today is Remembrance Day here in Canada. And a lot of people have the day off to honor our veterans, our members of military. But I decided not to. And the reason why I decided not to is because we're talking about something that the veterans, in my opinion, if they understood it, if this was available and we could have sat down and talked to them about this and explain the capabilities, the freedom aspect of Bitcoin, I think they would have been on board. So that's what we're trying to do here. We're not trying to get rich per se. That's going to happen regardless. But what we are trying to do is separate money from state, take away the ability for somebody to print money. And I want to listen to this. This is a 1-minute clip from Dave Smith. This was at Bitcoin 2024, I believe. But he's talking about the power of money and how money has been the main funder of wars. So let's listen to this.
The more you learn about money and government control of money, you realize that that is the whole game. And that every evil thing that government does is only because they control the money supply. I mean, just think about we fought a catastrophic 20-year war in Afghanistan that literally killed hundreds of thousands of people, cost trillions of dollars, and thousands of our bravest young boys died, and then tens of thousands committed suicide in the wake of the war, right? Well, just imagine if they couldn't print the money for that war. Imagine if they had to tax the American people every month for the war in Afghanistan. You think that thing would have lasted 20 years?
No way.
You'd have been lucky to get it through a year before that people would have demanded a result. What are you doing here? I mean, just imagine trying to do the lockdowns of 2020 if they couldn't just print trillions of dollars and pass them out. That people wouldn't have taken it. They would have been like, no, we're going back to work. We're not doing this. It's only because they control the money that they can get away with tyranny. The more you learn about money and government control of money, you realize that that is the whole game. And that every evil thing that government does is only because they control the money supply. I mean,
He used the 20-year war in Afghanistan, and it's absolutely right. I'm not disagreeing with that. That's the most recent example we've had, the one that we can relate to most, I think, in terms of funding 20-year war with debt. How do you think we got to be $36 trillion in debt? That's the US. I shouldn't say we, but that's kind of the main measuring stick for people. But think about the first war. Think about the timeline. Go back to the early 1900s. Look at 1912. What happened there? The Titanic. Look what happened in 1913. The Federal Reserve was created. Are those two related? I don't know. Yes. But then look at the First World War. They needed something like the Federal Reserve in order to fund war. Because as Dave said there, if you didn't have the ability to print money and you actually had to take it out of people's pockets, you had to tax them more and say, you know what, we're going to war. This is going to require $200 a month from every citizen. Would people vote for that? Would people want that, or would they revolt? But you create a Federal Reserve, you give them the ability to print money, to fund war, to go into debt that just keeps piling on and on and on forever. And it was the same thing in the 30s, 1930, when the US defaulted on their debt, 1930. And then what happened after that? So every war we've had, every war that our veterans and members of military have fought in, have been fiat wars funded by the banks. And it's a very profitable business, for sure. And actually, Howard Lutnick was talking about this on the interview with Pomp too, how much money there is in war. So to me, will Bitcoin remove wars? I don't know. I think it will. Because you really have to think about that. If you have a scarce asset, and this won't be like a world where, Bitcoin's legal tender in every country, it's adopted by everybody, everybody's using it. We don't have to get to that point for it to stop wars. You just have to, and this is going to happen over time, whether there's, an announcement or not, but everything over time is going to be repriced by Bitcoin. countries are going to be buying Bitcoin. Countries are going to start printing money to buy Bitcoin. Countries are going to start mining Bitcoin. Bitcoin is going to become the world reserve asset. Everything is going to be measured against Bitcoin, right? So the wealth of a country is going to be measured by the amount of Bitcoin they have in their cold storage. It's going to happen. Whether you agree with that or not, it's going to happen. So when that happens, yes, there will be currencies, there will be stable coins, there will be altcoins. But the key thing with all that is that nobody's going to be able to print Bitcoin. And once you take away the ability for somebody to print Bitcoin, before Bitcoin, the world reserve currency was the US dollar, which could be printed. So you can fund things. You can fund pandemics. You can do whatever you want because you control the money. But with Bitcoin, that takes it away. And if you take away somebody's ability to print money, I believe that wars disappear. So that's why I think that especially on a day like today, it's important to highlight and showcase what Bitcoin's going to do for our future in terms of stopping corruption, stopping war, and so much more than that. Because if a country, like let's fast forward here, let's actually talk through this a little bit. This is what stuff I love doing on this show. But let's talk through this. Let's say that we know that there's only so much Bitcoin. We know that there's like one country right now who's buying Bitcoin. We know that every country is going to need Bitcoin. How much are they going to get at the end of it? The last countries to adopt are probably going to be gone. But let's say that a medium adoption. Let's say Canada is the 50th country to adopt Bitcoin. How much Bitcoin do you think that Canada is going to be able to get at that time? Realistically, based on current prices, based on the Canadian dollar weakening, and based on there's already countries, companies, everybody's holding Bitcoin. There's only so much Bitcoin. So let's say that Canada maybe gets 1,000 Bitcoin. Okay, so are we going to continue? Are we going to go into war? Are we going to continue sending money overseas if we only have 1,000 Bitcoin? Because when that happens, there might be trillions of Canadian dollars, digital dollars float around, but it's going to be based on how much Bitcoin and how much energy is backing that currency. So if they print a bunch of it, the dollar is going to go down because we have something hard to peg it to now. We had the US dollar, but it wasn't hard. It was always moving. And just so that's how that works is like, yes, Canada could print money, but then US is probably going to print money too. So it's like, it just keeps going up for everybody. But when you take away the starting point there, when you can't print that anymore, then there will be no more wars. Nobody will be funding wars with Bitcoin. So pretty important topic, something that we don't really talk about enough, but I thought it was very important to talk about here today on Remembrance Day.